Live in YouTube as well. Glad to have you with me. We're going to get started in just a minute from right now. Super happy you're joining me here today. By the way, if you've got any questions as we go along here today with this micro training, which is going to be about 20 minutes long, simply put your comments or your questions into the chat area or the comment area, and I will make sure that I'll answer those for you. Okay, so once again, let's officially get this bad boy started. My name's Dave D, and from DaveD.com, and what we do is we help you create one-to-many sales presentations for either in-person delivery or online that help you get a lot more clients with less work and less effort. Today, specifically, we're going to be talking about, well, how do we deliver our presentation? So there's a lot of talk about creating the presentation, creating the slides, and all of that kind of stuff. But how do we deliver a powerful webinar? Or how do we deliver a powerful in-person presentation? Well, one of the ways to do that is by making your transitions in your presentation flow very, very smoothly. The difference between someone who is a pro and delivers an engaging presentation is not just the content. It's actually, it really includes the how the delivery is done. So we're going to focus on one specific aspect of that, and that is how we transition from the three major pieces of our presentation. Now, just to review, there were three major pieces to any type of one-to-many sales presentation. The first is the opening from the very start, where how do you get started? What's the first thing that comes out of your mouth so you transition nice and smooth? The second thing that we want to do is we want to focus in on specifically how do we transition from our opening into the content section. How do we do that smoothly? And then we're going to spend most of our time, though, on the third transition, which is the one that most people struggle with, and that's transitioning from the content into the close, where we're asking the prospect to take a specific action. By the way, everything I'm going to share with you here today applies whether you're selling a product or whether you're selling a service, or whether you're doing a presentation in order to get folks to schedule an appointment with you, set up a meeting with you. Everything remains the same. Okay, so let's get into this. The first thing we want to talk about is specifically how do we start our presentation. So we've got our slide up. What's the first thing that we say? Because if we don't do that well, then we're going to struggle, right? We're going to lose the audience right from the very beginning. So I have a very formulaic way of starting almost all of my one-to-many sales presentations. And it sounds like this. And so you're going to want to jot this down, and you'll have the ability, because we're going to have a replay of this, hopefully, so you can watch it again and get the exact wording. But I basically start from my very first slide when I'm doing a webinar or in-person presentation. I start with, in the next blank minutes. So in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to teach you a 1, 2, 3 step-by-step system, step-by-step strategy that'll help you achieve this result without having to do this. So now this is not a really one-to-many sales presentation because I'm not actually selling anything today. But if you notice, I kind of even follow that format at the very beginning of this video. What I said was, I started by saying, hi, my name's Dave D from DaveD.com, and we help you create one-to-many sales presentations that'll help you get more clients in less time and with less work and effort. All right, so it's so I make a big promise at the very beginning. So that is how you open. Now, let's talk about, you've done all of your opening pieces, and you can look on my Facebook channel and in any of my programs and on YouTube and see the different, how all of this is structured. But now let's talk about, well, okay, so you've done your opening. How do you actually transition smoothly into the content of the presentation? And so typically in my format, what I do is I tell my core story, and then after my core story, I then transition into the content. I'm going to give you two strategies for this transition that you can use. The first one is if you are using testimonials in your presentation. So after I tell my core story and tell how wonderful I am and why people should be listening to me, then I'll say, but the real reason that you should listen to me is not because I've spoken on stage with these celebrities, not because of the great results that I've gotten, but actually the results that my clients have gotten. And then I will show 3 different testimonials from clients who've achieved results that from working with me. Now, so that's the little mini transition. Now the transition into the content is, so now let me share with you specifically what you need to know so you can get results similar to those folks. Right? So that's one transition if you are using testimonials. The next type of transition that you can use is, if you're not using testimonials, is you can simply say, after you do your core story, but you know what? This isn't about me. This is about you. So let me share with you the 3 things that we're going to talk about here today so you can get amazing results, right? So this isn't about me. It's about you. So let me share with you the 3 things. And then you would go over the 3 major, what I call chunks, as an overview. And then you smoothly go into your first piece. So once again, that's how you transition from your content, from your core story, your opening, into the content. Either use one of those. If you're using testimonials, use the first one that I went over. If you're not using testimonials, then use the one that I just shared with you. Okay? Now, the next thing that we want to talk about is the biggie. This is the Mac Daddy. And this is transitioning from the content into the close. I'm going to give you my very specific transitional statements so that you can use them and you can get results with them. Okay? So here's what we want to do. We've just done our content. Now, what most people do is they're really good at delivering the content because they know their stuff. They're experts in what they're talking about. But then what happens is everyone freezes up when we go into the actual content. When we go into from the content to the close, their energy changes. They speak faster or they speak slower, and it's almost like a siren's going off, right? This person's about to close. Just as a funny story, speaking of really bad transitions, when I was working as the chief marketing officer for the former GKIC, the company founded by Dan Kennedy, I did a lot of presentations. And a outgoing meeting planner who was disgruntled thought it would be really cool as a parting gift to put me in a tent, a wedding tent, for one of the 3-day seminars outside in a pretty dark wedding tent. And so anyway, there was a whole bunch of horror stories about that. Like they were repaving the parking lot, so the entire wedding tent smelled like tar, that tar smell. But that wasn't the worst. I was actually transitioning into my clothes, and I kid you not, I'm transitioning into the clothes, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of fire trucks, right, and police cars with their sirens blaring. So talk about a transition and alerting people, hey, Dave's about to close. That's what happened. So probably not that dramatic for you, but in most cases, for people who aren't used to selling from the stage or selling online via webinars, they do change their energy. The audience notices it. And when there's that change of energy, again, it reduces the results that you get. So this is gold, what I'm about to give you. Here is the exact closing sequence. So after you've done the content, here's the exact words that you should be saying. So far, you've discovered, and then you recap what you just talked about. The key words there are, so far, you've discovered. The reason that those words, and they seem very simple, and they are, but they're powerful. The reason that those work so well is that the audience, by using so far, you're telling the audience subliminally, hey, we're not done yet. There's more. That there's more teaching coming up. There's more great content coming up. So you want to use the words so far you've discovered, then you recap. And then you say, but I want you to get this one thing. But I want you to get this one thing. And then you lay in, you talk about the major thing that they must believe, that you need to get them to believe in order to move ahead. So for example, let's say I'm selling cybersecurity. I would say, so I want you to get this one thing. It's not a matter of if you're going to be attacked. It's a matter of when. And it doesn't matter what size company you have. But the good news is you don't have to be a victim. In fact, you can be victorious. Now, I just made that up off the top of my head, and I don't sell cybersecurity, but you get the idea. So I need my audience to buy into that premise. Because if they don't buy into that premise, then guess what? They're not going to schedule a consultation with me. If they don't think that they're going to have a problem, they're not scheduling anything with me. So now, obviously, your entire presentation is built around that premise that they need to believe, but you want to recap it here. The next statement after you do, but I want you to get this one thing, the next thing that you do is you tell them this. You say, I want you to get this one thing. Then you do the one thing. The question you might be wondering right now is, or you might be wondering, and then you put in something, one of these two lines. You say, you might be wondering, well, how do I make this happen? Well, how do I implement this in my business? Well, how do I make sure that I'm a victor and not victorious? So whatever it is. So after you do the one thing, I want you to remember, the next thing you say is, now you might be wondering, how do I make this happen? Or how do I prevent this? Or how do I get these results? Key words are, now you might be wondering. Important, because if they are not thinking of that question, guess what? They are now. You just planted it in their brain. They have to think about it when you use that language. If they are thinking about it, and if you've structured your presentation correctly, most people are probably thinking about it. Okay? So what happens then in that scenario is that the audience gives you credit. The audience member gives you credit for knowing what they're thinking. Okay? So that's that little transition there. The next transition is to say, well, there are two ways that you can get this result. There are two ways that you can get this outcome. Just say that, and then you say, the first is the trial and error method. Meaning you can take what I shared with you here today and you could try to figure it out on your own. Now, that is a legitimate method, but it is the slow, painful, and quite frankly, the more expensive option because of trial and error, trial and failure. Since you're watching this now, since you've been watching this webinar, since you're sitting in this room, my guess is you want to get results quickly without struggle and without stress. And the easiest way to do that is by not reinventing the wheel. So the first option is the trial and error. That's what you tell them. The second option is to not reinvent the wheel. Now, depending upon what you're selling, what you say after that, that's how it depends upon what you're selling, right? So I was saying, if I was selling cybersecurity, we'll just keep with that example. I would say, so the second way is to not try to figure it out or not try to reinvent the wheel. It's to work with somebody who actually does this for a living and knows all the ins and outs and is up on the newest threats, the newest technology to protect your business. Right? So you introduce that, that's the option. After that, you introduce your solution. And don't worry, I'm going to run through this again. I'll recap this because this is like so important. So then what you do is you introduce your solution. So if I'm offering a consultation, you can say, and that's why I want to offer you an absolutely free 30-minute cybersecurity audit. Right? Now, if you're selling an info product, and that's why I created the ultimate webinar system. Okay. So whatever it is, you introduce whatever it is, the thing that you're selling. Now here, we're not done with the transition. There's a bunch of little transitions here, but I really want you to get this. And I'm telling you, if you implement this into your presentations, it's going to go smoother and your conversions are going to go up. Then the next thing you do, though, is you actually take it away from them. So you've introduced the solution, they're excited about hearing the solution, and now you pull it away a little bit. And you say, but before I tell you about this, let me tell you who this cybersecurity audit is not for. Let me tell you who my ultimate webinar system is not for. And then you list out 3 criteria, 3 people, prospects that don't fit into the criteria of who you want. You say who this is not for. Now, there's a bunch of psychology, and if you guys want me to, I'll do another video on that. We don't have time to do it in this. Remember, this is a micro training. This is a condensed training on a single topic. But I can go into a deep dive on what that slide should say. But at this point, you pull it away. You say who this is not for. And then you introduce the product and you go through the program. You go through whatever the consultation is, whatever happens during the consultation, the benefits, the features, all of that kind of stuff. So let's review the closing transitions because there's a bunch of them. The first is, so far you've discovered, then you recap what you've told them. But I want you to get this one thing. You then tell them the outcome that they need to get, okay? That the audience needs to believe. Then you get this one thing, right? And then you say, by now, you might be wondering, how do I make this happen? Okay? And so then you are going to then tell them how they can make this happen. And then you say that there's 2 options. So, well, you actually have 2 options. By now, you're probably wondering, how do I make this happen? How do I get this result? Well, you've got 2 options. One is the trial and error method. Try to do it yourself. Try to figure it out. Right? That's the long, slow, painful method. But since you're here watching this, my guess is that you want to get it done quickly and efficiently so you can see results in your bank account as quickly as you can. Well, the way to do that is to not reinvent the wheel. So you give them the 2 options. After you give them the 2 options, you say, and that's why I have for you, or that's why I created for you. Then you introduce your solution. Then the next transition is, but before I tell you about that, let me tell you who this is not for. Let me tell you who this is not for. Okay? And then after that, you just go into your close. So that is how you do your transitions. That's how you make them super, super smooth. And if you have the transitions, here's another little secret for you. If you have all of the transitional statements memorized and you're following a format, it makes creating the presentation way easier, and it makes delivering it way easier because you know specifically how you do it. So because you know specifically where you're going to be using the same words as the transitional phrases in all of your presentations. So people will often come and they'll come for a consulting day and we'll create their presentation. Then I will do it for them. And they're amazed, even though I don't know the topic, how I do it so smoothly. Well, the reason is everything I just told you. Because whether I'm doing my own presentation or somebody else's presentation that I've created for someone, I have all of the transitions, and there's a bunch more, by the way, but these are the major ones, already memorized. I already know it, so I can just smoothly go from one piece to the next piece. Okay? So, if you've got questions, now I'm not seeing any comments or questions coming in, and I notice that my system here is saying that there's a technical issue with it. So if you want to, whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, if you just want to put the comments in, I'll come back and I will answer them for you, okay? I'll do my level best to answer those questions for you. By the way, everything that I just told you works at just as well in a feature-length webinar or a feature-length presentation, something that's 45 minutes to up to 2.5 hours long, as well as a short-form webinar. So the shorter webinars that we create for people, that we teach people to create, it really works out the same. You still need all of the stuff that we talked about, whether it's a full length or whether it's a short form webinar. Now, by the way, if you are interested in having me create for you a short form webinar funnel that really attracts your best prospects, gets them to like you, trust you, consider you to be the expert, and then gets them, after they watch the short webinar, and by the way, these webinars are about 17 minutes long, gets them to schedule an appointment with you. If that's something that interests you, then simply email me at dave@daved.com. That's dave@daved.com, and put in the subject line, "Done for you." This is a service where we create everything for you. We script out the webinar for you. We record the webinar for you. We put up the webinar pages for you. We write the follow-up email sequence. We do the technology. We do it all for you so you can just get it up. If that's something that interests you, again, it's dave@daved.com, and just put in the subject line, "Done for you," and then I'll email you back with details. All right, so I hope you got a ton of value from this. Again, if you've got questions, simply enter them into the comment section, and I will go back and answer those questions because we're having a little technical issue with the comments and the questions coming on in. So thanks so much for joining me. Hope you got a lot of value from this. Enjoy your weekend. And as